Good morning. Welcome to the third lecture on audio production techniques. So, I think we have sort of the expected number of students already uh, participating in the class. So, that should be okay. Um, so, in today's lesson, what we are going to be focusing on um, is going to be certain technological aspects of sound and audio. So, in the previous week, we looked at the basics, sort of fundamentals about sound, how sound is produced, and certain properties of um, sound and sound, how sound is propagated, and things like that. So, this week, what we will be focusing on is how that sound can be acquired using certain technologies, but then also how uh, it could be manipulated, and what are sort of the technologies that we will have to use to do that. So, as always, there are some additional resources that you can refer to further um, uh, expand your knowledge on this particular section of the course. And these are some of the resources that I may have used in this lecture series. So, when we talk about technology in sound, there are two places that we will be mainly talking about where technology could be applied. So, the first stage is where the sound is initially created. So, the point of where sound is being created, there certain technologies can be used. And then, as a second stage, technology can again be used when sound is being recreated. So, when we talk about creating sound, so these are the things that we would normally understand as sort of sound sources. So, these could be sort of musical instruments or any sort of device that is able to produce some sound. So, in essence, like any object can produce sound, like if you tap on something that will produce sound, but these are sort of devices or equipment that we manufacture for the purpose of actually producing some sound. So, an example could be like a bell or something, a cymbal or something, that type of like musical instruments, but also other electronic type devices like synthesizers, which are again devices that are manufactured, that are made for the purpose of producing a sound. So, they are creating a sound from how those devices work. Then we have other devices such as uh, like playback devices or recording and playback devices. These are things that can recreate sound. So, what happens is sound was created at a particular point in time, then you would be able to sort of capture that or record that in some form, and then you are able to recreate that. So, in one of the sort of older ways of recreating sound is using musical notations. So, when you write the musical notations of a performance, then that performance can be recreated. But from a more sort of a technological point of view, we can think about things like playback devices, recorders, tape playback devices, or even like computer based playback devices. All these things are basically recreating the sound. Even if we take the interaction that we have with between us, uh, I am creating the sound initially using my mouth or vocal cords, for example, and then that gets transmitted to you, and then at the end it is being recreated in your speakers or earphones or headphones. So in all this creation and recreation of sound, we can sort of identify sound in another two ways. That is, whether that is in the form of an analog signal or whether that is in the form of a digital signal. So here again, whatever the sound that will be produced or reproduced will always be an analog signal, because sound itself is an analog signal. But in terms of whether it is being recorded or sometimes whether it is being transmitted, in those places it could be stored or it could be sent as digital signals. Again, in the case of us, we are having, again, the sound is being produced as an analog signal at my end, then it gets transferred into an analog to digital signal, then that digital signal gets transmitted across, and then that digital signal is again converted back to digital to analog, and then it is reproduced at your end. So that is sort of how different type of sounds and sound signals can propagate as well. So when we think about that the sound and sound being reproduced, one of the sort of technologies or a number of technologies that has evolved over the years to enable that to happen. So these are like older sort of phonographic cylinder devices or record devices, that type of old devices, to sort of modern digital devices such as sort of media players, or like these days largely any sort of computing device is capable of recording and playing back sound. But that is sort of an evolution of sound that we have, and over the years the technology has improved, and with the improvement of technology different things have happened. For example, up to a point, sound was actually being produced and even recorded as an analog signal. So if we take, for example, say record players or even sort of cassette tapes or tape recorders, the sound was actually recorded in its analog form and it is reproduced as it is. Whereas from the time of, say, compact disc, they were digitized, and the digital version itself is stored in these devices, and then they were reproduced again through conversion. So in sort of the initial type of devices and technologies, there was no analog to digital or digital to analog conversions, whereas in sort of newer technologies we have these conversions happening. So when we sort of look a bit further into these technologies, a bit further into the different technologies that we may be using, one of the things that we already identified is the audio signal itself, the actual audio that is being produced by something is going to be an analog audio signal, and it is going to be a continuous wave. That continuous wave is going to be the analog audio signal. So that is, again, in certain type of devices, that is the type of signal that is stored, and again the same thing can be reproduced back. Whereas digital audio is not the actual sound itself, it is a representation of the original sound. So the sound signal will be something, then it has to be converted using certain mechanisms to a digital representation of the same, then that conversion can be reversed to produce the original audio signal again. So you can recall some of the things that we may have studied previously in, say, digital control systems, in sort of analog to digital conversions, digital to analog conversions. So the way digital audio signal works is we take a continuous waveform and then we break it into a number of representative parts, and then we store that representative parts in some digital representation. So that is what we would mainly do in digital audio. And one of the things that you may recall from the previous course is that the quality of any signal that is being sort of recorded, if it is an audio signal, that will depend on how many samples that we can take from the original audio. Say if the original audio, we say it is a continuous signal. So if it is the original audio and that is a continuous signal, and then what we have is we are going to take a number of samples to get the representation of the audio, and we can make the audio better or the quality of the recording better by taking more and more samples. The more samples that we take from an audio signal, we will have the higher quality sound, or the reproduction will be of higher quality. So again, if you think back about analog to digital conversion, and when we talk about digitizing audio signals, there are two main steps. There are two main steps involved in creating digital signals from analog signals. Applies to audio signals as well. So the first stage is what we call sampling. So what we mean by sampling is we go along the horizontal axis and create a number of divisions. So we go and create a number of samples, and so what we will do is over a period of time we will go at a set time interval and we will see what is the sound at that particular point. So that's why the more samples that we take, more times we go into that original audio and we take out the information, we will be able to better represent that original sound. Say, for example, if we had only taken, say, few samples, then when we connect these signals, we would not have the exact sound as we would want. So this wave may be not as representative as if we take much more number of samples, and when we have more number of samples, then when we interconnect them or sort of recreate them, we can have more sort of close to the original representation. So that is sampling. Then the other main activity or the other main part of digitizing an audio signal is what we call as quantization. So in quantization, what we do is we divide the signal by the vertical axis. So we divide that by the vertical axis, and this is what we would normally represent in sort of bits. So the sampling is what we would normally represent in hertz, and quantization is what we would normally represent in bits. So we would say, and we would quantize for each sample. So say if we took a sample here, and quantization is how many bits are we going to use to represent this particular sample. We can say we can use 8 bits to represent that sample, or we can use 16 bits to represent that sample. And what that would mean is, say if we are using 8 bits, and with 8 bits we can normally represent 256 different values, because with 8 bits we will be able to represent a number up to 256. So 266 different numbers. So we will be able to set different 286 different values there. So that is what we will be doing when we are quantizing. So sampling is dividing along the horizontal axis, and quantization is dividing along the vertical axis. And I hope you all remember this from the previous course, or maybe you can just recall that. And again, this is again something that we have covered previously as well. That is Enquist theorem. I think that's how it's. I don't know whether that's how it is pronounced, but the main point about this one is, the more samples that we take, the better the sound representation that we have. So say in the first one, if we only take a few samples, then when we retrace using those samples, we may not get the exactly similar type of a sound signal, or the recreated signal may not be as accurate as the original. But whereas if we take more number of samples, then we would be able to accurately sort of represent that much closer to the original signal. So that's why the sort of sampling rate of audio will also depend on how you would perceive or listen when you are listening to a sound, the quality of the sound. So for example, say you normally can hear the difference between, say, a CD quality sound and sort of like, say, a telephone sound, for example. On a telephone, you hear, even when on a telephone you listen to, say, a callback tune or something, you listen to a music that is being played back, but that sound quality is very, very different from how you would listen when you are listening to that music on your computer or on a CD or something. So that difference is because the sampling rate used in telephone signals and sampling rate used in CDs or digital audio playback can be significantly different. And one of the other things is, because the amount of sound, or the amount of variation that we can hear, or the frequency up to which we can hear as humans, is generally up to 20,000 hertz, we need to have this theorem. The main thing this theorem says is, if we have a particular target frequency that we want to hear or we want to represent, then the sampling rate should be the double of that target frequency. So here, given it is 20,000 hertz is our target frequency, our sampling frequency should be 40,000 hertz. So that is why like, say, CD quality audio or that type of a thing normally have 44,000 kilohertz as the sampling frequency. So the main point to remember is, if we have a target frequency to reproduce, whatever the representation that we have should be double of the original sound frequency, or the frequency of the original sound. So some of the things that you can sort of, depending on different type of devices and so on, there could be variations in terms of the frequency that they may record. Say for example, digital audio, and even sort of pro digital audio these days would use 48,000, and a lot of consumer digital audio would use CD, like CD rate, that is 44,100. And then like the lowest is around when it is being used in sort of telephones, that type of a thing. And this is the difference that we observe between, say, when we listen to music on telephone and when we listen to a music on a digital audio playback. Because that significant sampling rate difference is there, we would listen, or we would hear the sound very differently as well. So sampling is one of the main stages that we would do when we are taking an analog audio signal and taking it into a digital representation. But one of the things that we identify with sampling is it is going to be representative of what is the original sound signal is, and then we are converting it into a digital form. And the more information we have in the original signal, we'll have to have more data to represent that. So if the original sound signal has a lot more frequencies, then we need to spend a lot more bits to represent that. So one of the things that we can do is, if we, for example, take the original sound signal and eliminate the frequencies that are not needed. Say if the original sound signal has a frequency spectrum of 20 to 20K, so that is the original sound spectrum frequency. So then if we are digitally representing that, we would have to think about all these range of frequencies. Whereas one of the other things that we can do is, for example, say if our sound application is mainly about talking, one of the things that we can do is we can say talking is between 50 and 10,000. So we say talking is between 50 and 10K. So now our representation can simply be this. So we don't have to, we can sort of eliminate, or we can eliminate the need of representing this area because our key sound is not in there. So what we would do, that is, we would use what is called band pass filters. So band pass filters will eliminate certain frequencies, and we will use this sort of tighter frequency range. So the digital information that we will need to represent that can become lower. So that is an option that we will have. And in many ways, in this sort of analog to digital conversion, we will use some form of filtering to do something like this. So what we gain from doing that is, because if we are able to filter out the sound out to a particular frequency range, for example, say let's take the example of the telephone audio, for example. When we have telephone audio as an example, that is the reason why you hear very bad music on telephone, because it uses a very limited frequency range compared to our typical audio. So any audio, say if a music is being played back on telephone, and if it is, say, the original sound had 20 to 20K sound signals, and if we cut out a significant part of it and not use it in the end audio representation, so that is what we would have in sort of telephone situation. But the advantage here is, now we only need less number of bits to represent that signal. Whereas if we go further and further, we can also we will need like a lot more bits per second to represent the whole sound itself. So we can choose between the two, like whether we can spend or spare a lot of data in terms of either as a storage space or bandwidth, or whether we are primarily focusing on the quality of the reproduction. So we have to trade off the space requirements or bandwidth requirements. So again, we can can be dictated based on our requirements or our needs. Certain applications will be okay with sort of limited frequency ranges and limited bit representations, whereas others will require higher bit representations and higher frequency ranges. And especially in a lot of professional applications, it is not uncommon to use even higher bit rates to represent even more details, because the more and more bit rates that you use, the more and more details that you can have about a signal. And when you have more details, then when you are manipulating them, you can do much more things. Say, if you break that sample and break that signal into something, after that you will not be able to do much about that, because like you will not be able to go back and get any information that is lost. So you have to think about that at the initial stage of digitizing and decide upon what is the sampling rate that you need and what is the number of bits that you are going to use per sample. So that is something that you will have to decide, again depending on the application that you have. So are there any questions on things that we have discussed so far? If there are any questions, please let me know as we go along and we can discuss about these as well. But as I said, these are like especially this conversion part is something that you may have covered and you may remember from the previous courses. But anyway, we will look at them as sort of a revision at this point. So that's not sampling date, that is sampling rate. And the two main properties is, so when we are talking about digitizing the analog audio, is sampling rate, that is how many samples per second, so how many samples that we are taking per second, and bit depth is how many bits that we are utilizing to represent one single sample. So that is the basic two characteristics that we would have to decide upon when we are thinking about the digitizing of analog audio. And in the context of this course and sort of audio production perspective, the two common values across is these two. For sampling rates, it could be either 44,100 or 48,000, and for bit depth, it would be either 16 or 24 bits. So these are the most common sampling rate and bit depth that you would be working when you are working in the context of audio production. Even higher sampling rates and even higher bit depths are always possible, and there may be certain applications that may use that, but that is not something too common. But these two are the most common type of applications, type of sampling rate and bit depth that you may be using in most professional applications. So now, when we think about, we have acquired some audio. So we have, when we say we have digitized some audio, that in itself means we have somehow got that audio from an analog signal and converted into a digital representation and either stored it somewhere or transmitted across somewhere. So we have that digital representation now. So once we have that digital representation, one of the other next things that we will almost all the time do, especially in the context of an audio production environment, is doing some editing to that signal. So we acquire that signal, we digitize that signal, but then we will do some digital audio processing. So that is, we are manipulating that signal, or we are editing and making some changes to that original signal. So some of the simpler operations are things like, say, trimming. So we are removing unnecessary parts before and after the recording, or then removing certain silences in between, mistakes in between, and then we are splicing, joining them together, changing volume levels. If the volume is low, increase; if the volume is high, decrease, that type of a thing. And sometimes we may record audio as multiple tracks and place them together. Say you would record some music, or you would record different instruments one after the other, and then play them together at once as sort of a multi-track recording. So we can record, say, 4 different instruments and maybe a voice track, and one after the other, and all of them are put in multi-tracks in parallel, and we play them back together. So that type of basic operations that we may do in terms of processing. Or we may even do sort of other sort of advanced or complicated editing or processing, such as we can resample. So that is, say, if we originally got a sound at a particular sample, we may reduce the sampling, or we may try to like, say, resample that to a different, say, if we originally recorded something on 48,000, we may be able to reduce that to, say, 44,100 to put it into a different medium, for example. Then we can have, say, some of these things we will come back later on to discuss how these different operations can be done. But the main thing is we will be able to process that audio signal to produce slightly modified version of the original the signal. So what we may have is, we may start with an analog signal, then that analog signal may get a sort of a digital representation. Assume that is a digital representation. Then that digital representation itself can be modified by, say, removing certain parts, or like increasing the volume of this part, that type of a thing, and then we will end up with a slightly different digital signal. So, and that signal is the one that we maybe actually end up using. So whatever the original signal that we had may be significantly different from what we end up at the end as the digital signal. Then there's another concept that would be of interest to you when we are thinking about acquiring digital analog signals, and then once we have converted them into digital signals, then when that digital signal is being transferred across different mediums, we may come across a problem of what is called digital noise, or digital signal noise, or digital audio noise. So when we take analog audio, or any audio signal that is passed through any sort of cables or any sort of transmission mediums, there's a possibility some additional external interferences come in and modify the signal slightly. It could be sort of magnetic interference, electrical interference, and so on, and they can influence the original signal that is passing through and slightly change that signal as it goes along. So that introduction of change is what we call as noise. So when it happens in analog signal, then that affects the analog signal that is being received. In the digital signal case, what we would have is, we would say, you'd start with an original signal, and then as the original signal goes along, in the transmission medium, a particular noise gets added depending on the medium that we have. Then what we would end up is, you would have a signal that has slightly modified. But in the case of a digital signal, if the modification is sort of minimal or not significant, we would still be able to represent that as the same digital representation. Because as long as we can reconstruct that as a 0 and 1, we would be able to easily bring it back to the same representation. But the challenge here is, if our original signal had low values or low signal component from an electrical point of view, what we would end up with is that noise may be much higher than the original signal level. So the noise may be much higher than the original signal level, and that may impact on what we reproduced at the other end. So when we have the noise and signal, it may negatively impact on what we receive, or we may receive a wrong representation at the receiving end. So how we would sort of represent that is called signal to noise ratio, SNR, or signal to noise ratio, and that is the ratio between the signal power of the original signal, and the power of the noise signal. So that is how we would represent signal to noise ratio. So again, this is something that you may have to think about from a production perspective when you are utilizing different technologies. Certain devices may have certain self noise that they introduce, certain cables, cabling techniques, certain other interconnect mediums and so on. They may have different signal to noise ratio, and you have to think about that as well when you are utilizing these different technologies. So when we think about, say, different equipment or different type of devices or audio applications, we can see that they have significantly different signal to noise ratio, and one of the things to remember is, so if you remember the equation here, it is the signal power over noise power. So if we have more signal power, the value will be higher, and that is what we want. We want to have higher signal value, because we want to have higher the signal. We want the signal to be more than the noise. So when we talk about SNR, or signal to noise ratio, what is the preference is for higher SNR values, and that is what we would normally prefer to have in professional audio equipment. And as always, we come back to our old telephone systems, and they have the lowest of signal to noise ratio. So that is something to remember as well. Different applications, sort of different, even within sort of audio applications, different applications have different signal to noise ratio. So now we can briefly talk about what happens when we have already digitized the signal, and now we want to store it in our devices, in a computing device, for example. So now we have digitized the signal, and now that needs to be stored somewhere, or sometimes even transmitted across. So when we are talking about those use cases, we can, once the signal is digitized, again it can be stored as it is. So what we do, we take samples at a particular frequency, particular sampling rate. We take for each sample we take a particular bit depth of representation. So if we have 8 bits, we take 256 and so on, number of representations for per sample, and then that all that number of bits we will store somewhere. So we will store that somewhere, all those bit representations. So that full representation is what we would call as uncompressed audio. So we would not make any changes, we will just store as it is. So that is what we would use normally for recording and reproducing. So editing and so on, we would use what is called the uncompressed format. So this is the typical formats, or typical file formats are like WAV, that type of a thing, but these are sort of uncompressed files. Then we have what is called compressed files, and the need for that comes from uncompressed files are very, very large. So because they have a significantly higher representation for all the bits and all the samples and so on, the file size becomes significantly larger and not so suitable for transferring across mediums, especially when you are sending it through the internet, streaming, or sometimes even for storing purposes. If you are storing, say, like a typical, say, a 5-minute kind of a song, on like an uncompressed may take about, like, say, 50 MBs roughly speaking, whereas 50-60 MBs I guess, whereas an compressed form may be like 10 times less, depending on the compression and the parameters of the compression. But the advantage is now we only need less storage space or less bandwidth when we are thinking about transmitting that. So again, that for that reason we would use a number of compressed audio formats when we are especially talking about transferring, streaming, or even sometimes storing in sort of certain applications. So for example, when you are storing music on your phone, you may store them as MP3s, whereas when you are editing them as a production point of view, you may edit WAV files, not MP3 files. So that is how, because when you compress, you end up losing quite a bit of information through that compression. So because of that, you would always try to edit from the uncompressed format, and for like transmitting and transfer purposes, we will use the compressed format. Then when we are talking about compression itself, we will have two different categories of compression, ways of compressing. So the first one is called lossless compression, and second one is called a lossy compression. So when we talk about lossless compression, what we have here is when the audio is compressed, it is not actually losing any information that is normally there. So it takes from all the bits and data in a WAV file, an uncompressed WAV file, it converts into something, or it modifies it, but it can always bring back that information. So it will only do certain digital compression, sort of file-based compression. It's rearranging certain bits in certain manner, compressing, like how it would do in a zip file, for example. Say when you compress a file using like zip like compression, you can always unzip that file and get the original file back, because you are not losing anything in that file. That is lossless compression. Whereas lossy compression is when you compress it, you are losing certain information. You discard certain frequencies, you discard certain patterns, so you can never go back to the original representation. So that is what you would have as lossy compression. So again, because of that reason, lossless compression may not always be able to achieve smaller file sizes or smaller bandwidth requirements. Whereas lossy compressions, because they are discarding quite a lot of information, they will be able to bring the file size or the bandwidth significantly lower. But again, depending on our application and depending on our need, if say for example quality or bringing back the quality of the original file is our importance, we may use a lossless compression. Otherwise, we may go with a lossy compression. And the algorithms that we use, the equations that we use to do these compressions is what we would normally identify as codecs, for example. Like we may use, say, we have compressed this with an MP3 codec or an OGG codec or something like that. So those are codecs that we use or algorithms that we use to compress these files. Then from the context of, again, digital audio, one of the last things that we can sort of briefly talk about is what is called MIDI. We are not going to discuss about MIDI in a lot more detail because that is not the focus of the discussions here. But as an introduction, what MIDI is, it is also a digital representation of music, but it is not an audio representation. It is a digital representation of music, not audio. That is the main difference that you need to remember. It doesn't represent audio. It is almost like, say, like how you would write music notations. You may write music notations in a sort of a music sheet, and someone can look at that and play that back in an instrument. Say if you are violin notations, we have write the score for that violin as notations and give it to a violin player, and they may be able to play and recreate that. MIDI is such a format. So it doesn't actually store the original audio information there. It stores the musical notations and that information, and then it can be reproduced by what is called a synthesizer. So what we have is the actual representation of MIDI would have few things. It would have some representation, like it is basically like a digital representation of few bits, and it has certain information about what is the instrument, what is the channel and things like that, and what is the notation that is being played, and what is the velocity that particular notation is being played, and like it is going to have representations for the music that needs to be produced. And the two components that we will, so this is the information that will be stored and transmitted in a MIDI information. But the equipment or the software or the tool that we would use to create this is what we called a sequencer. So that is what we would use to create that representation, create that bit representation. And then we would use what is called a sound synthesizer to reproduce the sound or produce the sound from this MIDI scores. So the main difference is this is not digitized audio. It doesn't store audio itself. It doesn't digitize the audio, but it saves a representation of audio. Then it can be taken back to, say, different equipments or different software applications and so on, and it can be recreated using the same score. So that is MIDI audio, and it is also a digital representation of audio or sound, but it is a significantly different one. That is, it is only a notational representation, rather actually digitized sound representation. So that's all that we have to discuss for the main content for the day. Are there any questions that you have from what we have discussed so far? If not, we will go into discussing about the practicals. So as I said, we'll have about three or four small, like about two would be fairly smaller projects, like that you can do in like 1 or 2 hours kind of a thing, and there'll be one slightly larger project that you may have to do some practicals around. So what we have for this one is the expectation is that you do some basic sound recording and editing. Then how you do that is you can do it at home using anything that is around you. So you can make some sound, you can talk, you can play some music, you can throw things at the wall and that makes a sound, and then you can record that. That's up to you. And don't disturb the others too much, then but do whatever to make some sound, and then record that using any device that you have, a mobile phone, a computer, so anything is okay. So we are not talking about any sort of particular using mics and things like that. Use whatever that you have and record the sound. And then once you have recorded that, we previously mentioned that you can use any software. So use any software. The simplest I suggest is use Audacity, but anything else is okay. And I have shared some resources on LMS on how to use Audacity and the setup of Audacity, so you can use that and you can edit that audio. And then what I need is, I want all of them combined together into a single compressed file, and there is a file size limit. So what I want you all to do is, I want you all to record 3 things. Then I want you all to edit those 3 things. So then I want you all to put all these. So now you have 6 different files. Put these 6 different files into a single file, one after the other. Then combine it into an MP3 or an OGG compressed file and upload onto LMS. So that is the project that you have to do. Is that clear? And are there any questions about that? So it is not significantly complex, and you should be able to figure out and do. And if there are any particular questions or clarifications that you need, you can always ask me. But I hope this is something that you should be able to do on your own. And I will share, if needed, I will share some additional resources on LMS as well. But to do these basic things, you should be able to do, like, use like whatever the device that you are using now to access this course, the same device would be capable of recording some sound, and then you may be able to do some editing. If there are any limitations or challenges in doing that, please let me know and we can work with some alternative options. If there are no other questions, I would like to actually talk about something else before we conclude the class today. So this is not particularly about this lesson, but I thought this would be of interest to you all, just from because you guys are doing multimedia, you may find this one interesting. So I am going to just share that with you. So what you see here is how I am actually doing these lessons. So how I capture and record these lessons, and then how I stream and do that. So I'll just briefly spend a couple of minutes to go through, if just for you, because you may find it interesting. So what I have is, I have a webcam and a microphone, and the microphone is connected to an audio interface because my laptop doesn't have a good analog to digital converter, so the audio doesn't come that good, so I have connected it through an audio interface. Then that audio goes to an OBS studio, then I have PowerPoint, and sometimes I also use other sources depending on the type of lectures, and those also go into an OBS studio, and that is what I use for my main video and audio switching. So that is the main source of information that is being produced. But the compute I have, my laptop, is significantly older, and it is not capable of recording and streaming at the same time, because then I have certain frame rate losses and things like that, and we experienced that in the previous weeks as well. So what I have now is, on my original laptop where I am doing the switching, I do the recording part. So I record that, and then I transcode and upload it to LMS or sometimes YouTube, depending again on the lectures. But then what I do is I use a secondary laptop, and I send the signals through what is called NDI, or Network Device Interface. It is a network connected video transport technology, and I use NDI to send whatever the signal that is produced by OBS. So there I use the OBS NDI plugin in conjunction with NDI tools. So that converts, or that takes whatever the output that is being produced at OBS and sends it across to the second laptop. And these two devices are connected through an Ethernet cable, and directly connected through an Ethernet cable. There's no switch or anything involved, but it is possible to connect through a switch as well, but they are directly connected. And then on the receiving end, again I have NDI here on the receiving laptop, and there I use what is called NDI virtual input. So what NDI virtual input does is it takes whatever the video feed that it receives from the NDI stream from the first computer. It takes that and it converts into a webcam feed. So it represents that as a web camera. So whatever the application that I use for streaming, I would give that as the webcam input and the audio input, and it will directly take that and stream it. So that is what I would have here. So this is the laptop that I use for my OBS switching, and that is the laptop on the other side. I have a Zoom meeting is running on that one, and that's where I have selected that one. So this is just basically just to show what I do, and some of you may find it interesting. And actually the interesting part here is this one, the NDI part. And even from an audio perspective, NDI can transport audio of like fairly good quality audio across. And there are actually similar audio transmission, audio transport technologies as well. We may come to sort of discussing them later on. These are sort of IP-based transmission technology, so you don't have to run network cables, but rather they are carried through sort of networking, sort of typical IP networks. So they have some advantages as well. We may come to discuss them at a sort of a later stage. So that's all that we have to discuss for the day. And given that there are no further questions, I think we should be able to conclude the lesson for the day. And as always, if there are any questions, you can always reach out on WhatsApp groups or LMS or email or anything. And please look into the assignment. It should be already available on LMS, or if not, it will be available after the class. And try to do it as early as possible, so you are not stuck with other assignments later on. Especially this one, you should be able to do in like 2-3 hours. So whenever, say, if you don't have any lectures this afternoon, maybe you can go and do that today itself, so you are not extending that until later stage when you have too many assignments, and then the problem is too many things. And anyone having any issues in terms of lack of access to devices and all these things, please contact me personally and we'll try to see what we can do about that. What are the options that you may have to do that? So, other than that, given that I don't see any questions on the chat windows or anything, we will conclude the lesson. See you next week. Thank you for joining for this lesson, and bye.